Hi, welcome back to Let's Get Lit. In today's video, we're going to go over Chapter 8 of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. We are almost finished with this book, so let's see how things wrap up, shall we? All right, here we go. All right, you ready? Let's start Chapter 8. So, this chapter starts out with Nick not being able to sleep very well after the events that have happened. As dawn approached, Nick could hear a car going into Gatsby's driveway, so he gets up and goes over to his house. When Nick makes it to the house, he sees that the front door is open, so he lets himself in. He sees Gatsby standing by a table, and immediately Nick suggests that Gatsby needs to go away for a week or until the whole thing blows over. But Gatsby won't hear of this. He will not leave until he knows the decision that Daisy has made. Nick lets the reader know that it was at this time Gatsby told him the story of his youth with Dan Cody. Nick notates that now with everything out in the open, he is free to tell his story truly. Gatsby tells Nick about how he met Daisy, how he was a soldier in the war and stumbled upon her house with a few other fellow soldiers. As they entered the house for a party, it was his first time he saw her. Gatsby says that the moment he saw her, he knew he was going to fall in love with her. He talked to her the whole night, and the more he talked, the more he fell in love. However, Gatsby knew he had no family wealth behind his name, which made him uneasy, thinking that she would never be with him due to this. But Gatsby didn't care and continued to talk anyway. Gatsby then says it was 2 days later when he returned to Daisy's house. They spent the day together, enjoying each other's company, talking, flirting, and him just holding her in his arms all afternoon. Gatsby says he didn't imagine how much he was going to fall in love with her until that day, and he knew that he must do everything in his power to come back and have her for his wife. Gatsby then tells Nick that soon after this, he was sent off to war. Gatsby did exceptionally well in the war, going from lieutenant to major to working his way through the ranks. All the while he was in war himself, him and Daisy wrote letters back and forth to each other. When the war was over, Gatsby had trouble coming back home due to miscommunication, which left him in Oxford for a short while. During this time, Daisy was growing restless of waiting for Gatsby. She wanted her life to take shape and have meaning to it, and move further in her journey. It was in the middle of this during spring when she met Tom. Gatsby admits that there was some wholesome bulkiness about Tom that Daisy was flattered by, and that was when the letter came from Daisy about her marrying Tom. Gatsby continues his story, saying that once he was able to get out of Oxford and come back to America, he went straight to Louisville with several of his army friends. While there, he searched high and low, seeing if he could find Daisy. However, this was the time when Daisy and Tom were in France. Gatsby mentions that he was walking through town and everything reminded him of her, and that looking at her house made it that much sweeter with the thought of Daisy. He then notes that after a few days, he gets on the train and heads away, and as the train is moving down the tracks, all of the memories of Daisy start to feel as if they're running into the past with the speed of the train. Nick mentions that it's almost 9 o'clock in the morning before they finish breakfast. Once they are finished, they head outside to the veranda where they can see the large pool in front of them. The gardener comes out to Mr. Gatsby and states that he's going to drain the pool because autumn's going to be coming and leaves will clog the pipes. Gatsby asks if he can hold off 1 day or so. That way he can enjoy the pool. Gatsby says he's never enjoyed the pool the entire summer. Nick mentions that it's almost time for his train to come and take him into the city, but Nick doesn't want to leave. He tells the reader that he lets this train and the next train and a few other trains go by before he tells Gatsby he must go into work. Nick mentions that about noon he'll call Gatsby to see how he's doing. Gatsby mentions that maybe Daisy will call as well, to which Nick responds that he hopes so. As Nick is walking away from Gatsby's house, he turns to him and tells him that they're all a rotten crowd. You're worth the whole damn bunch of them put together. Nick mentions how he's always grateful that this was something he had said to Gatsby. He also lets Gatsby know that he really enjoyed breakfast. Nick tells the reader that he makes it to work and that he isn't able to pay attention. He ends up falling asleep in his swivel chair, and just before noon the phone wakes him up, and when he answers, it's Jordan. She lets Nick know that she is no longer staying at Daisy's and that she is going to be headed towards Hampstead, probably down to Southampton that afternoon. She asks if Nick and her should get together, to which Nick responds not today. After this phone call, he tried to call Gatsby's house, but every time he called, the line was always busy. He soon learned that Gatsby was keeping an open line from Detroit for any business that might come in. Then Nick notes that he took his timetable out and drew a small circle around the 3:50 train. Nick lets the reader know that he's about to jump back in time in this moment. He goes back to the night of the crash, after him and the others have driven away. How Nicholas stayed with Mr. Wilson the entire night trying to calm him down and talk some sense into him. However, Mr. Wilson was not about to do that, and he was not about to listen to anything. All Mr. Wilson could focus on was the yellow car, and how he wanted so desperately to track the car down and find out who the owner was. We also learn through this that at the same day as the accident, Mr. Wilson learns about the affair his wife has been having. Mr. Wilson shows Nicholas the dog leash that she had shown him earlier that day. Mr. Wilson was convinced that whoever was driving the yellow car was the person she was having the affair with. As the early morning of the hours grew on, Nicholas tried very hard to get Mr. Wilson to fall asleep, to rest. Before Nicholas had to go and open his restaurant, Mr. Wilson takes him to the window and tells him that God is watching, that God is always watching, and knows what everybody has done. He points towards the advertisement of the optometrist. Nicholas notes the time and states that he must get back to his restaurant to cook for his customers. Nicholas then says that after the morning rush, he had laid down for a few hours to catch up on sleep. Once he awoke, he went over to the garage to check on Mr. Wilson, but he wasn't there. Nick then tells the reader that once Nicholas went to work, Mr. Wilson started going to the garages all around town, asking who was the owner of the yellow car. He also states that it took him many hours, but his journey eventually took him to West Egg. And by the time he got to West Egg, he knew that the owner of the car was Gatsby. Nick lets the reader know that at 2 o'clock, the same day that Gatsby got into his bathing suit, got his inflatable mattress and headed out for the pool, he told his butler that if any calls were to come, he was immediately notified, and that the yellow car was not to be taken out under any circumstances. Nick speculates that as Gatsby was waiting for the phone call that would never come, he was wondering if Gatsby was thinking about how he was going to restart his life, and if he felt like he wasted his life for the past 5 years waiting for a dream that would never happen. Nick lets the reader know that he arrived to Gatsby's a little after 4, and that the butler had heard some strange noises coming from outside, but didn't seem too concerned about it. At that moment, they heard another noise and ran out towards the pool, where they found Gatsby lying in the pool, dead. Nick notes that blood was pouring out from Gatsby's body. Nick also mentions that very soon after this, the gardeners found the body of Mr. Wilson not far away, dead as well. This concludes Chapter 8 of The Great Gatsby. Tune in next time as we go over the final chapter, Chapter 9. Have a great day, and remember, stay lit.